Tails, why? Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Argonaut, and in this video we're going to be taking a look back at Sonic 4 Episode 2, the second and final installment to Sonic 4, including its development history, story, and gameplay, as well as my thoughts on it. But, before all that, if you like this video and want to see more like it, then feel free to click that subscribe button to keep up with me. I'd really appreciate it. And, now with all of that shameless promotion out of the way, on with the video. As I mentioned in my Sonic 4 Episode 1 video, Sonic 4 was always planned to have 3 episodes. So, with Episode 1 releasing and selling well, because yes, at the time it did sell well, development on Episode 2 began shortly after the release of Episode 1, with Dimps once again at the helm of development, with Sonic Team, who was still busy developing Sonic Generations for Sonic's 20th anniversary, helping them. Noting some of the complaints with the first game, a brand new physics engine was used for Episode 2 to address that, along with the addition of Tails and Metal Sonic. Sega even remastered Sonic CD in late 2011 in preparation for Episode 2. Since Sonic CD would serve as a prequel to it, Sega wanted more players to know that story. Now, just understand the humor in that. The version of Sonic CD that most of us most likely know today, the same one that was thrown onto Sonic Origins, was basically released to prepare players for Sonic 4 Episode 2. A game that I'm sure a fair amount of people don't even remember anymore nowadays. But Sonic 4 Episode 2 would see a release between May 15th to May 17th of 2012 in all regions. And now to move on to my first experience with the game. Now, first off, I gotta say, I never realized just how much love Sonic was getting in this window of time. You got Sonic 4 Episode 1 coming out in 2010, Sonic Generations coming out in 2011, the Sonic CD remaster coming out in late 2011, and then Sonic 4 Episode 2 coming out in 2012. Like, geez, what a busy couple of years. But for me personally, I don't really recall seeing any type of promotion for this game at the time. No commercials or ads at all. Actually, the first bit of promotion I saw for the game was on a billboard in Brooklyn. Before then, I actually didn't even know the game was coming out. Just like Episode 1, Episode 2 was also $15 on release day, and of course I bought it as soon as I found out about it. But, unlike the first game, I didn't really play this one. I basically played through the first act of the first zone and then just put it down. Mind you, I didn't think this game was bad, because again, with Sonic 4 Episode 1, I actually liked that game at the time. It's more like I just put it down and told myself I would eventually get to it, and it got added to my backlog. Fast forward to 2014, right when I was about to start playing Sonic Adventure 2, and then Sonic 4 Episode 2, my PS3 stopped working, and then I moved on to my PS4, and pretty much forgot all about Sonic 4. And with Sonic 4's reputation getting worse and worse over time, I wasn't exactly in a rush to go back and play it. But hey, now I currently have a working PS3 again thanks to my girlfriend, and I already played through Episode 1, so what have I got to lose by playing through Episode 2? Will Episode 2 be any better than Episode 1? Or will it be more of the same? Let's find out as we move on to the story and gameplay section of the game. The story of this game involves Dr. Robotnik finding and fixing Metal Sonic after Little Planet reappears again, since, apparently, Metal Sonic was only severely damaged after the events of Sonic CD. Right. Severely damaged, huh? But, with Metal Sonic repaired, Robotnik sets off to create a new Death Egg above Little Planet, and Sonic, getting news of Robotnik's plans, teams up with Tails and heads out to go stop him. Now, for the gameplay of Episode 2, it has a lot of the same controls that Episode 1 had. Sonic can run, jump, and spin dash, as well as using the homing attack, which I still think is pointless in a 2D Sonic game, seeing as it was made so Sonic can hit enemies easier in a 3D setting, but whatever. After having it in the first game, it'd be weird for them to get rid of it now, and I've already made my feelings about them using modern Sonic's character design in these games known back in the Episode 1 video. But this time, new to the game, Tails also tags along with you on your adventure. And he does more than just follow you like how he did in the classic games. First off, they made Tails transparent at points so he doesn't block your vision, and by tapping square in the air, he can carry Sonic and fly him through the sky, similar to the old games. Or, if done underwater, he can carry Sonic throughout the water with no time limit. And, if you hit the square button while on the ground, Sonic and Tails will do the rolling combo, which is basically just a big-ass spin dash that can be used to kill enemies, as well as knocking down some obstacles in your way. Okay, but first off, upon starting the game, you're greeted with this really static title screen, which already gives me flashbacks of Episode 1. But the physics this time around actually do feel a lot better than they did in Episode 1. You don't lose momentum over every little thing anymore. You also don't get stuck at those weird 45-degree angles. It doesn't feel like Sonic's running through a world made out of jello. Essentially, it actually feels like how you'd expect a Sonic game to feel. And, level-wise, you get 5 new zones to run through in this game, which actually seem to be way more original than the ones from the first game. While the zones in Episode 1 essentially felt like slightly tweaked versions of zones from Sonic 1, the zones in Episode 2 feel brand new. I mean, sure, you have the Oil Desert Zone and Sky Fortress Zone that feel like a different version of Oil Ocean Zone and the Sky Fortress from Sonic 2 and 3, but I feel like it's more forgivable, because how many times do we see redos of those stages as opposed to Green Hill Zone or the Casino Zone? But at least the Sylvania Castle Zone and the White Park Zone feel new, and Episode 2 also doesn't let you freely pick any stage you want like in the first game, which I think is for the better. It was honestly pretty weird how in Episode 1, that besides boss levels, you could pick any stage of any zone at any time, almost like you're in a Mega Man game. And of course the Chaos Emeralds are back in this game. Why Sonic has to recollect them after the end of Episode 1? Who knows? But in order to access the special stages, just like with Episode 1, you have to finish a stage with 50 rings or more, which I think is a bit of a shame. I kinda wish they went with the portal appearing above the signposts as a throwback to Sonic 2, or if they should have done the giant hidden rings like in Sonic 3, since both of those other methods would increase replayability and exploration of the levels. They actually did put hidden red rings in the levels for that, but it's just not the same. There's no real reason to bother with those unless you just want to collect them. But, getting back on track, once you finish a level with at least 50 rings, you'll see a giant ring you have to jump into. Do that, and you'll get taken to the Special Zone. The Special Zone this time around is the half-pipe from Sonic 2 again, where you just have to collect a certain amount of rings before each checkpoint to progress. Do this 3 times, and you'll get a Chaos Emerald. Of course, just like in Sonic 2, there's bombs and other obstacles throughout to slow you down or make you drop rings. Most of it isn't really a problem though, especially because Tails can't drop rings in this game. That's right, if Tails gets hit by a bomb, he doesn't drop rings anymore, making life so much easier. Also, if you're ever about to lose, you can always just hit the retry button right before that, and you'll get another chance to try again without having to replay the level, making this one of the easiest Sonic games to get all the Chaos Emeralds in. And, just like in Episode 1, once you get a Chaos Emerald in a level, you can't replay the same level for another one, which at least forces a little bit of replayability, but once you get all the Chaos Emeralds, you know what that means. You unlock Super Sonic. Get 50 rings and you can transform, giving you super speed and invulnerability. And as long as you don't get crushed or fall off a cliff, then you're fine. Funny enough, the only time I really used Super Sonic was against the last boss. Which brings me to my next point. The bosses. At the end of each zone, you fight a boss, and the bosses in Episode 2 are actually original. Not just slightly tweaked versions of bosses that you fought before, like in Episode 1. Now, while I think the dev team had the right idea with how the fights were designed, creativity-wise, I really like how you have to utilize your combo attacks with Tails half of the times to fight, or use your platforming skills, but I also think some of the boss fights suffered from long, unskippable sequences, with really small attack windows. Take this one for example. As Robotnik hops around back and forth, I need him to land in front of me, and then use the rolling combo to hit the robot's toes. Only thing though is, look at how small the attack window is. And at the same time, I need to keep moving, because he'll try to step on me directly. And it's not just this boss. All of them have a similar problem with these long sequences where you get just a really small window to attack. But for the finale of the game, after beating him multiple times throughout, you end up having to race against Metal Sonic in the Death Egg Mark II. Which, I mean, isn't that kinda how he lost to begin with? But I actually found the race to be really fun in this game. You could admittedly use the rolling combo to shoot right through this race and win, but I chose to beat him on my own. And after beating Metal Sonic, you move on to fight against Robotnik in his latest creation, the Egg Heart. Now, remember how a little bit earlier I was talking about bosses having these long sequences? Well, this boss is the worst offender. For this boss, you need to use your platforming skills and get to the center without getting electrocuted. Afterwards, Robotnik would reset everything, and then you'd have to do it all again with a ramped up difficulty. Now, as easy as it sounds, the chances of you dying here are actually pretty high. And you have to do it about 8 times, and after a couple of hits, it becomes hard to get your rings back. Now, the boss itself isn't really hard. It's annoying, sure, but not really hard. What really makes everything frustrating is having to rewatch all the long, annoying, unskippable sequences. I ended up just saying screw it and going supersonic at the end of the day to get through it, but after you beat Robotnik, Sonic and Tails escape on some escape pods while a lot of explosions are happening around them, and as we see them go towards Earth, we see the lights turn off in the Death Egg, and I can assume that there was meant to be an after-credit scene or something here hinting at Knuckles being in the next one or something that got cut because this is one of the blandest endings to a Sonic game I've ever seen. But, as I'm sure you all know by now, Episode 3 got cancelled, so whatever the original ending was meant to be got changed to this one, thus ending Sonic 4. Now, while that may be the end of the main game, they actually added a little bit more. If you bought Episode 1 and Episode 2, you unlock Episode Metal Sonic, which shows how Robotnik found and repaired him on Little Planet, and how he was in pursuit of Sonic before the events of Episode 2. Now, Episode Metal is only 4 acts long and is basically Metal Sonic playing through one act of each zone from the first game. The only notable thing that happens here is he finds this weird power source and powers himself up in one of the acts. And now, personally, I think they should have let the player use this as a super form of sorts for Metal. I think it would have been a fun mechanic, and that it was a wasted opportunity. And also, I found it kinda weird that Robotnik's robots would also attack you for some reason. I mean, aren't you an ally? But now that I'm pretty much done talking about all the single-player stuff, the last thing I want to talk about here is that Episode 2 also added multiplayer to the game. And not just local multiplayer, but also online co-op. And the servers are actually still up to this day. Now, of course I wasn't able to find anyone to play with. I doubt that there are people out there burning to play Sonic 4 online in the big 2026, but it's still cool that it's here. From footage I've seen of it online, it seems like it'd be like playing Sonic 2 back in the day pretty much. Only Sonic doesn't have screen priority, just whichever player's in the front does. It's just still cool that this game had this as a thing, when other games didn't, even when they really, really should've. But now with all of that out of the way, let's move on to talking about how the game did after release. Now, I can't find any official sales numbers, but after Episode 2 came out, it received mixed reviews from critics at the time. And in January of 2015, Sega announced that they weren't going to be moving forward with Episode 3. While I can't find an official reason as to why, it's believed it was due to the poor reception and poor sales of the first 2 games. Although, again, because of Sega's push for Episode 2, we did end up getting a remaster of Sonic CD, which I am super appreciative of. And, about a year ago, what should have been the original ending to Episode 2 was found and leaked online, which shows Knuckles with the Master Emerald and the Death Egg being powered back on. And, after Sonic Mania came out in 2017, fans couldn't help but look back at Sonic 4 and think of it as an even worse game than it was. Although, personally, I feel like most people only think of Episode 1, not so much Episode 2. Let me know in the comments, when you think back to Sonic 4, do you ever think of Episode 2 as well? or only Episode 1. But with that being said, let's move on to my thoughts about Episode 2. For me personally, I never really heard anyone talk much about Episode 2 throughout the years. It was only ever how bad Episode 1 was. So, going into the game, I wasn't expecting much. Especially after starting it up and seeing that static title screen. But, as I played through it, I actually found myself pleasantly surprised. Fixed physics, original levels, new unique bosses, and not counting Sonic Generations, classic Metal Sonic would be coming back for the first time in over a decade. And this game also doesn't shower you with lives like how Episode 1 did. Originally, I was regretting not making my Episode 1 video about both parts of Sonic 4, but after playing Episode 2, I think I made the right call in not doing that. If I had to put it in numbers, where Episode 1 feels like a 4 out of 10, Episode 2 feels more like a 6.5. I can even nervously say a 7. My personal issue with the game was just how long you had to wait before getting another opportunity to attack a boss again. And if you happen to die against the boss, you'd have to go through the whole process again. Besides that, I didn't really have any issues with this game. And seeing all the changes Episode 2 went through compared to Episode 1, it basically meant that Sega was actually listening to the feedback and adjusting things. Knowing that, I'm actually sad that they never made an Episode 3. I think it actually would have been good. Episode 2 actually lives up to being Sonic 4, unlike the sad excuse that was Episode 1. Like, if it got cancelled after Episode 1, I would have said, thank goodness and good riddance. But Episode 2 was such an improvement, and with only one more episode left, I can only ever wonder now at what could have been. Also, honestly, I think Episode 2 is actually worth the $15, unlike Episode 1. And lastly, I gotta wonder, how does the timeline for this universe work? As far as I know, Sega didn't officially confirm the timeline for the classic games until Sonic Origins in 2022, and we now know that it's Sonic 1, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, and then Sonic 3, followed by Sonic Mania. But in this version of events, Robotnik fixes Metal Sonic when Little Planet reappears again, and Little Planet only appears once a year. So it's probably been at least a year since Sonic CD happened, so for this game, is the timeline Sonic 1, 2, 3, then CD, and then Sonic 4 Episode 1, and then 2? But it's a Sonic game at the end of the day, and I'm thinking way too hard about this. But those are my thoughts on Sonic 4 Episode 2, the last part of Sega's first attempt of making a sequel to the classic trilogy. Did you agree with me? Did you disagree? What were your thoughts about Sonic 4 Episode 2? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you. And, with that being said, next time for the Sonic Marathon, I'll be taking a look back at Sonic Superstars, Sonic's most recent classic game. I hope to see you there, and until then, I'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for watching.